This is morning, so good morning. I don't know when you're going to watch this, so this is an unusual circumstance. And we would like to talk about real estate in these unusual circumstances. And initially we were on slide number 46, and the title of that slide is Direct Capitalization Result. So we learn about how to come up with the NOI, net operating income, for commercial property, and then we divide the net operating income for this coming year by the so-called going-in cap rate. Then we come out with an estimate, and this is the relatively straightforward method. And today we want to move on to talk about the second method that will be based on the cash flow discounting method. But before we do that, so next slide, we wanted to talk about this yield, okay? And in this example that we were on center point, and let's suppose that the purchase price is $980,000, and the NOI 1 for this coming year, okay, and 97,200. Let's suppose that is our pro forma number, and the property, let's assume that we hold that for a year, and the value of this property will goes up to $1 million by the end of the year. So what would be the total expected return for this 1 year horizon? Okay, and that's the notion of internal rate of return. Internal rate of return is the rate of return that we'll be able to realize if indeed we spend this amount of money today, and over time, and we'll be able to receive those expected cash flow. And this Y0, this expected internal rate of return, IRR, could be computed as the 97,200. You can think of it like a dividend, like an income, and along with the capital appreciation, that will be the difference between $1 million and $980,000. $1 million is the property value at the end of the year, and $980,000 is the market value of the property at the beginning of the year. So here we have two components, 97,200, that's the income. The difference between $1 million and $980,000, that is a capital gain. And we add them together, divide by the initial capital outlay, $980,000. Then we have our internal rate of return, Y0, okay? That is 9.92% plus 2.04%. Okay, next slide. So this is the equation that we have here. We're talking about the expected return, internal rate of return, Y0, has two components. One is the R0, that is our cap rate, and the G is the appreciation rate. So here we have two components. Although the equation is written as Y0 equal to R0 plus G, but intuitively it's more like R0 plus G equal to Y0, the other way around in terms of causality. The reason being that internal rate of return is the total return determined in the capital market, and we learn about that this rate of return in the capital market on Wall Street, the real estate return need to compete with the return from stock, the return from bond, etc. So real estate will need to provide appropriate level return given its amount of risk in order to compete for the capital inflow, for the capital investment. So this is given by the outside total capital supply and demand. It's not the property, the real estate, this particular sector will be determined by itself. And once this y0 has been determined, you can think of this is out of our control. Once that number has been set, let's assume that that is a certain amount, number. And the cap rate, let's assume that given our property value, given the net operating income, we have a certain amount. In order for this equation to hold, it just means that the remaining part has to be the appreciation depreciation, or the other way around. If the depreciation appreciation expectation have been set, then we will need to have certain amount. We will need to have certain amount of the going cap rate in order to add up together to be equal to the expected return that need to be satisfied. Okay, so this is what we have here. And so let's summarize what we have here. The property value, the property return has two components. One is the income, that would be dividend component. The second component is appreciation or the depreciation if the market prices, market value coming down. Just like any other investment out there, total return has two components. One is the income return, the other one is the capital appreciation or depreciation. And next slide. And in this particular slide, this is coming from one of the research reports that I retrieved online for the first quarter of 2017. And here, the yield, okay, the IRR, that's focusing on the this is the office. Let's look at the first column for the office, for the CBD, and let's look at the under the headline of going cap rate. Let's look at the average value. That's a 5.4. So look into that would be the first column under CBD, and you should be able to find the average going cap rate 5.4%. And we have the 5.4% and plus the appreciation in order to have the total internal rate return. And here, the total internal rate return in the same column, now it labeled pre-tax yield rate, IRR. The average number is 7.3%. So 7.3% is the sum of a excuse me. Sorry, I forgot to unplug my landline. Okay, and so here we can see that 7.3% is the IRR, is Y0. It's a sum of the 5.4% going cap rate.
Hello.
Along with the something.
Message after the beep.
Sorry.
Good morning. This is Catherine calling with Champlain Orthodontics about an appointment that Sabrina has with us on March 23rd at 3:10. We are hoping.
This is what happened. Okay, when we deliver instruction remotely, and but it's okay. Let's continue. Okay, so as you can see that we can see that through these two numbers we can imply the appreciation rate will be 1.9%, because only if that the 5.4% plus 1.9% appreciation rate, we can come up with 7.3%. Okay, so when a property investor set a price, purchase the property such that the going cap rate is 5.4%, while this investor expects 7.3% total rate of return, then it must be true that this investor expect 1.9% appreciation in the property sale over this particular year. It must be the case. Okay, so that's the reason why we learn about this identity. Next slide. And here is just talking about the direction of the causality. the causality, we know that risk drives the return, okay? And this has a lot of implication in terms of the way that we think of how these three numbers add up together in terms of R0, G, and the Y0, okay? And when we label this equation at the bottom of this particular slide, we can see that we determine Y0 first. The Y0 lead to the combination of R0 and G. And G is something that, based on our subjective evaluation, such that we determine at what property value we are willing to bid for the price such that the R0 could be realized. That's what I mean by this particular equation. And the expected required internal rate of return is higher than the 10-year T-note yield by a spread. We call that risk premium. And we have learned about this concept for property investing. The risk-free rate is a 10-year T-note rate. And at this moment, of course, we know that the Federal Reserve had just dropped the federal fund rate to almost 0%. And it was like the day before yesterday, and the market had to tank because due to this pandemic. And so right now the 10-year T-note rate has been very, very, very low, and it's not far away from 0%. And on the other hand, we have a risk premium. For example, let's talk about the current 15 years fixed rate mortgage. Okay, right now the interest rate, the mortgage rate right now is about 3 to 3.2%, while the risk-free rate is close to 0. So at this moment, it just means that we have a very large risk premium because the uncertainty. The lender will not kind of hesitate to lend out to the home buyer to buy a home because it's afraid that if down the road that the homeowner may be losing their job, not being able to repay the mortgage. So there's a lot of risk coming in this kind of uncertain time period. So the risk premium will need to be substantial to compensate for this kind of a lending risk. And that same idea is here. So that Y0, okay, this total rate of return has two components as well. One is a risk-free rate. And for property investing, we usually use 10-year T-note yield as the proxy to measure this amount of rate of return. On top of that, any additional return is the so-called risk premium that compensates investor for bearing investment risk. Okay, and that's in the bottom of this slide say that the spread, that would be the risk premium. Okay, trend down during a bull market and trend up during a bear market. Right now we are in a bear market, so this risk premium shoot up for the fixed 15 years fixed rate mortgage. Right now the risk premium is about 2.5%, about 2.5%. At this moment, about 2.5%. And in a normal market condition, that risk premium is usually just about 1%. So it has been shooting up like crazy. The next slide, okay. So as you can see that we have the change of the market risk premium, okay, when time goes by. During this time period from 2000 to 2017 for this particular chart, the gray area, those are the economic recession. As you can see that during the recession, the market risk premium goes up, and once for those white collar area that we have the bull market, the market risk premium trending down. So when the bear market, we have the market risk premium goes up, and during the bull market, when the economy is expanding, when the economy is good, and we see the downward trend of the market risk premium. Next slide. This slide says that we want to learn the second method, that is discount cash flow analysis. We try to work on the same numerical setting, we have doing pro forma for the center point property and come out with the net operating income for the first time period when we use direct capitalization method. Now for the second method, we will need to have a longer pro forma period. We will need to estimate NOI and PBTCF for each of the year, for each of those years during our holding horizon. Next slide. And let's recall that the difference between NOI and PBTCF. PBTCF equal to NOI minus CapEx. And these two measures, they are all before debt service. So here the income, the interest expenditure are not part of the equation. And the NOI is more of the operating income measurement, and PBTCF is more of the some sort of like a free cash flow measurement. Okay, and this is a measurement to the property and not to the owner. Property just means that this entire project, and the owner is the equity provider. So this is a cash flow to the entire the combination of the debt holder and the equity holder, not just entirely go to the owner, i.e. equity holder. And therefore they are the so-called unlevered measurement. Okay, and recall that PBTCF is before tax. Okay, we do not take the tax into consideration as well. Therefore, the kind of discount rate need to be the unlevered, need to be before tax kind of discount rate. Okay, in other words, I was talking about what kind of rate of return one would need to earn when the investor, let's pretend the investor do not borrow any money, and also that we do not. This is the kind of rate of return that we would need to be able to earn before the tax. Okay. Next slide. And so for this kind of DCF method, we will need to think about what would be the holding horizon. And we talk about this in the classroom. The majority of the property investor in commercial sector, usually they hold the property 8 to 10 years. And here for our numerical example, let's assume that this particular investor is going to hold the property for 5 years. Let's assume that the average investor in this market hold this type of property only for 5 years. And we repeat our NOI analysis for not just for the first year, but also for the second year, third year, fourth year, and fifth year. Let's assume that the NOI number, the first year, 97,200, that's a number that we have already. And we repeat the same estimation method. For the second year, let's assume that we come out with 98,900. The third year, 100,126. The fourth year, 102,382. And the fifth year is 104,884. And pay attention that we will need to have the NOI estimate for the 6th year. In other words, that when our holding horizon is N year, in this case 5 years, we will need to have the pro forma for N plus 1 years, okay? And the reason we will need to have that additional N plus 1 year is because later we will need to utilize direct capitalization to turn the 6 years NOI into the exit value of our property when we sell this particular property. That's the reason why we need to have N plus 1. So we have the first 5 years of the cash flow, basically some sort of cash flow for the first 5 years, and then we have the 6th number, turn that into the exit value, then we'll be able to do the discounting as usual. And let's assume that going out cap rate, okay, R5 is 10%. Okay, and usually this cap rate in 5 years is a number we don't know exactly what the number would be, so we would need to estimate that number. And usually we use a long-term average of the cap rates. Let's say that the cap rate in the past 30-40 years, and we do a simple average to come out with a number that we think that the most likely going out cap rate in 5 years would be not far away from the long-term average. So that's the kind of logic that we usually would do. And in addition to NOI estimate for each of the year for n plus 1 year, we will need to do the pro forma analysis for PBTCF for 5 years. In this case, that for n years, and we have performed this analysis for this coming year. That would be 89,100. Okay, we have done that. That's been bolded, and we repeat this process for second year, third years, fourth year, and fifth year. Let's assume those numbers: 91,773, 94,526, 97,362, and 100,283. These are the 5 numbers. Okay, so these 5 numbers that we just went through are the cash flow we will need to perform our discounting. And the V5, at the bottom of this slide, that the V5 is the exit value. That means that what would be the expected property value we will be able to realize when we sell this property at the end of holding horizon. That would be at the end of the 5 year. In this case, our estimate is $1,060,000. That would be the NOI 6, 106,000. Okay, that would be the NOI in 6 years divided by the exit, the going out cap rate 10%. And that's how we come up with that number. And now let's do the DCF. So the DCF will require 5 PBTCF estimate. We will need to have the going out exit value $1,060,000, and we also need to have the discount rate. Okay, we assume that an appropriate discount rate is 11.75%. Okay, and the way that we come up with this discount rate 11.7, and by the way, the discount rate is not the yield. Okay, discount rate is the risk-free rate. In this case, that we assume that we hold it for 5 years, then we look up what would be the 5-year T-note yield currently. Let's assume it's 4.75%, and then we're talking about the market risk premium, right? Earlier, the market risk premium is the additional rate of return that the investor would need to have in order to bear the level of the risk associated with this type of property. And let's assume that for the Center Point office building, and the appropriate risk premium is 7% based on the market consensus through the survey database. Let's assume that's the case. So we add 4.75% with the 7%. We have 11.75%. And we also here want to take into account that when we sell the property, there is a transaction fee that we will need to pay. Let's assume it's $58,300. So the cash flow at the end of the holding horizon is the exit value $1,060,000 minus the $58,300 selling expenses. And as you can see that the CF5, we also add 100,283. That's a PBTCF for the 5th year. Okay, so at the end of the 5th year, we have the exit value, we have the selling expenses, we also have the PBTCF for that particular year, and we need to add up together. Okay, then the total appraisal value for the DCF method was simply equal to that. It's at the bottom of the slide. V0 equal to first year PBTCF 89,100 divided by 1 plus discount rate 11.75% plus second year PBTCF 91,773 divided by 1 plus discount rate raised to power of the 2. Do that for the third year PBTCF 94,526 and fourth year PBTCF 97,362, and also the cash flow for the 5th year $1,101,983 divided by 1 plus discount rate 11.75%. raised to power of the 5. Add them all together, as you can see that our appraisal value, okay, based on the DCF method, is $946,085. So this is the second method. We call that the DCF method to come out with the appraisal value. Next slide. Our first method, direct capitalization, gave us an appraisal indicated value, $980,000. And our second method, DCF method, gave us an estimate, an indicated value, $946,085. These two numbers are quite similar, but not exactly the same. So this call for reconciliation, and let's assume that no, the appraiser have more confidence in DCF method and also the DCF estimate. So give a little bit more weight to that $946,085 and give relatively little weight to $980,000 from the direct capitalization. So the indicated value toward the end, let's assume that the appraiser decide to be $950,000. Then this is the number that the appraiser will be able to report on the appraisal report. Okay. And when we do the next slide, when we talk about the appraisal value for a commercial paper, the uncertainty, that would be the change of the market value of the property, come from two different directions. One is uncertainty associated with the cash flow. One is uncertainty associated with the discount rate. In recent days, we have the coronavirus outbreak that we have seen a lot of shock to the discount rate. For example, the Federal Reserve rate from set by the Federal Reserve have dropped substantially. The first 0.5% weeks ago, and the day before yesterday another 1%. So we see that it had dropped roughly about 1.5% to 2%, all the way to 0% to 0.5%. So that is uncertainty associated with discount rate. That has impact on the market value of a property, and we also would be able to see uncertainty associated with cash flow. For example, let's look at the Church Street. The restaurant nowadays could not open to the public for sitting in. They can only do the business starting today, I believe, that only for takeout. And that is going to have a lot of implication on their business, and therefore maybe some of the restaurant may not be able to survive, and it's going to have implication for the property owner in terms of the amount of rent they would be able to collect. And this is what we refer to the cash flow uncertainty. So cash flow uncertainty along with discount rate uncertainty are going to have bring a tremendous amount of the uncertainty toward property value. And in this particular slide, we have another local example. That would be the UMall, the University Mall in South Burlington. At the 2007, that was right before financial crisis of 2008, the property was sold to a Boston investor, and at that time the appraisal value was $116 million. So it was very expensive, almost $120 million. And 10 years later, and because we have the Amazon that is very good at competing with local retailer, so all of shopping malls across the United States have seen substantial depreciation in terms of the market value. For our UMO, as you can see, that the appraisal value dropped to $51 million. It lost more than half of the value. And the main reason cited by this particular Burlington Free Press article is about the uncertainty about the cash flow. And it means, and this here, what happened to locally is that the lease contract right now will be renewed once a year. And so even if today you have the majority of the space being rent out, there's no guarantee that what might happen a year from today, because some of them may decide not to rent the property. Unlike in the past, that a lease would be signed for a longer period of time, that would tend to smooth out the cash flow over time. Okay, so that is a risk of cash flow stability example. Next slide. we have the individual assignment. This is the end of this set of slides. So today's our remote delivery would end here, but I just wanted to remind you that we have a appraisal value that have been postponed. The deadline has been postponed to the next Tuesday. Okay, that'll be next Tuesday. Next Tuesday, please submit your work electronic to my email account. And so this is it for today. And we have a relatively short instruction, and the first time using the technology I have at home and with some interruption. I apologize for that. So I learned something today, and next time when we do, I surely will try to make sure that our delivery will not be interrupted by my landline phone. And so that's it. See you next time. And during the meantime, stay safe and healthy. Bye-bye.